Hello, Sharif Abdullah here. And today we're going to talk about some recent events for me and maybe for us and what some of our next steps are. Some of you know I went down to Mexico um, over the past few weeks with two purposes in mind. Number one is to finally get this book finished. And I'm kind of laughing, but I probably need to be crying at the same time. The problem with the book is that there are so many ideas, and trying to fit them all together into a coherent package that's going to be under 800 pages is daunting. I have some friends who have written 800 or 900 page books. They're magnum opus, and they wrote it, and nobody reads them because nobody reads an 800-page book. Um, so this has to be concise, but it also has to have enough in it for it to make the difference. I've talked about the book already. The main working title is What the Baby Looks Like. What does our next human society look like? Making the assumption that we, all of us, are pregnant, and that this pregnancy is interesting in that instead of paying any attention to the baby we're about to have, we're paying attention to everything else. We're paying attention to the afterbirth, to the placenta, to the water breaking. We're paying attention to all the problems. And I think it's time for us to start paying attention to what the solution is that's coming about. We're paying attention to the things that keep us angry, that keep us fearful, that keep us in trauma. And what we need to be focusing on is the baby. And this is going to be a very interesting baby here. And I spend some time and some chapters in looking at what is our role and our goal as we are going into this 21st century with 18th century thinking. So we probably need to change that a bit. The second reason that I went on this, I left town, is because, as a number of you know, I was planning a workshop series for the winter and spring months, and I was putting a lot of time and effort and planning into it. And as you know, I've been talking about the workshop uh, for 2 or 3 months now. And when I finally got around to offering it, nobody signed up for it. Um, when I mean nobody signed up for it, I mean you didn't sign up for it. And a whole lot of other yous didn't sign up for it. And I'm not going to spend any time here talking about what that does to my energy, but I can tell you that it doesn't do anything good to my energy. As I'm moving forward in the world, um, I don't do this work for the mega bucks that I make from it. And as you can see, this is not this is not a mega buck apartment. I like my apartment, and my apartment likes me. But yeah, I live, I think, a very simple and frugal life. Um, I don't do it for, fame and, all of my television endorsements and all these other things. I do it because this needs to be done. We need to birth on our planet right now a new way of thinking. We need to birth a new way of consciousness. You've heard me talk about consciousness a lot over the course of the past 35 to 40 years. So to put planning and effort into something that is going to be birthing a whole new way of consciousness when we desperately need it and getting no reaction from it is daunting. So I went down to think about that, and it's nothing like being in an area where nobody knows you and very few people can actually talk to you, to really get clear on what's happening. I also had some interesting readings that were pointing in an interesting direction. The direction it was pointing in was saying you have to do something differently. Well, that makes a lot of sense, but then the question is, what do I do differently? Do I run for Congress? That would be awful. Do I learn how to tap dance? That would probably all be awful also. So I started thinking about what is it that I have held back from, and to start thinking about what is it that we can do going forward. These two things, the book and the work, hooked up in the last day or two that I was down in Mexico in some really interesting ways. Okay. One of my questions about the book was, who am I writing this book for? I mean, like, I like the writing process, but I'm not doing it for my health. I could watch old movies or something. That I don't have a need to be saying all this stuff. So I got either clear or clearer about what it is that I'm doing. And what I realize is the book, what the baby looks like, is the explanation of an experiment. And we're doing an experiment in consciousness. And the goal of the experiment is the awakening of Holonic Consciousness. Now, if you watch some of my earlier videos and read some of the stuff that I've been writing, you know what Holonic Consciousness is. If you haven't done that, and there are a lot of people who haven't done that, who look at my stuff when I send it out and say, they're telling me that they're doing this, that they look at it and they say, oh, that's something from Sharif. Let me put it over here, and when I get around to having some time, I'll read it. And a week later, or 2 weeks later, or a couple of months later, they may get around to skimming it. And that is not the energy or the attitude that will build a movement. That's not the energy or the attitude that actually is going to shift the position that we're in right now. We need to shift that position faster than I've been saying. And I've been saying we need to do this really quickly. And we need to do this even faster than that. Two things have come about in the last couple of weeks, even, that I think, which is why I'm putting the rocket pack on to move this process faster. One of the things that is really interesting has been this thing, the issue regarding the Chinese balloon that is hovering over America. Oh my God, what are we going to do? There's a Chinese balloon in the sky. And I had hoped that there would be, by this time, a core group of people who can see things like that being the game that they are. That that there are people who have a goal of manipulating us into fear. That a fearful person is controllable, and a fearful person is predictable, and we need not to be fearful people. So the fact that this has been occupying the media for so many days, I think is really interesting. The other thing is the announcement of a functional artificial intelligence. I think that's another thing that we need to be very cognizant about. As you've heard me say before, I don't think that artificial intelligence is possible. I don't think intelligence is possible without a heart. We can do all the brain stuff that we want, but without consciousness and without the connection of heart and mind, we're going to wind up with something that can sound human, that can, and I've actually played around with this AI a bit, and it really is impressive. Back when I was writing papers in college, I wish I had this, but it's not intelligence. And we need to, instead of going further down the road of machine, we need to awaken who we are. We need to awaken our humanity. While we're busy talking about this machine, how many people are experiencing spiritual illness? I'm not calling it mental illness. How many people are experiencing spiritual emptiness? How many people are experiencing the hunger for the sacred and not knowing how to get it fed, so therefore experiencing spiritual starvation? It is at epidemic proportions. There's nothing in the existing breaker society that's going to fix it. No one even has a pretense of fixing it. They say, oh, we'll hire more mental health workers. We'd have to have half the country being the mental health workers, and the other half are the folks who are trying to get mental health. So we need to do something different. What we need to do is awaken this holonic consciousness to a functional level, so people can see that rather than investing their time, energy, and thought into something that either will not work, or worse than not working, is something that could work, that's something that could further rob us from our spirit and our humanity. So I'm proposing that we do an experiment, and that experiment is going to be pretty simple. We get together and we awaken holonic consciousness. Now, since that's never been done before, we get to make it up as we go along. We have some ideas about that, and I'll be talking about that in subsequent videos. But sometime, and I want to start doing the first functional experiments in that. Sometime starting in mid-March, so there's an awful lot that needs to be done. There's something else that I have resisted doing, and I've changed my mind on the resisting doing, and that is, and you, for those of you who know me, I have used plant medicine before in order to deepen my connection with the spirit. And the plant medicine I've used has been ayahuasca. I've had 5 journeys over the course of the past 10, maybe even 12 years And also for those of you who know me, and I don't know, I don't talk about this, but I am not a drug user. I'm not an alcohol user. I drink a glass of wine or two in the evening. I'll be exchanging my teacup for a glass of wine when I close up shop tonight. Um, and that's about it. When I'm down in Mexico, along with my burrito, I have a bottle of beer, and that's as far as my that part of my life goes. I've never tasted tequila. I've never again, for those of you who know me, I did all of my marijuana smoking in college. I smoked enough for several lifetimes in college. I have no need to start doing that again. And so, what I've heard about and what I'm going to be experimenting with is first of all, I there are people who ask me if I would recommend ayahuasca as a method to get to um, a holonic consciousness, and I said no. And the reason I said no is that the ayahuasca experience is so literally mind blowing that there's not a whole lot that you can do, that you can consciously do, while the being of the ayahuasca, the indigenous people call her the Lady of the Vine. You know, there's another personality inside of you. And when she's there, there's not a whole lot you can be doing and thinking about. But I heard about something very recently that's called microdosing the ayahuasca, where you take an amount that is not psychoactive, okay? And what that does, what I've heard that it does, is it loosens the boundary between self, the illusion of self, and the illusion of other. Is it possible for us to open the door to holonic consciousness simply by loosening those bonds and not going through a full-blown psychoactive experience? I don't know, so I'm going to find out. I'm I'm very conscious of using myself as the human guinea pig here, but what I want to do is find out whether or not this experience of the microdosing is legitimate, and whether or not that can be used as something that can um, lessen the boundaries between us human beings, and open the door to the development of this higher level of consciousness. I'll be doing that over the course of the next couple of weeks, and if it works out, what I'm going to recommend is that we get as many people as possible to participate in the development of the holonic consciousness. Some of us may choose to do the microdosing in this process. Some of us may choose not to do that, but hopefully all of us will be in the same boat, the same journey toward lessening of ourselves and the creation of this other connection, this other being. There's an awful lot more I want to talk about with regard to that, but I want to do that in a to say kind of like what are we talking about, what's going to be required, um, what is the what are the elements involved, etc. I'm going to reserve that for another video, um, but I want us to think about what are you willing to commit to for the sake of us developing a mature human consciousness on this planet. Not a consciousness of just my little ego group, not a consciousness of my little political group, not a consciousness of to start to develop the consciousness of humanity, not all of the little separate parts of humanity. You've heard me say it before. It's time that we become one species, and in cooperation with all other species, it's time for us to get away from all of the leader stuff that we've been talking about and start recognizing that all of us together can be part of a consciousness that can be the salvation for the earth. Okay, I'm not nearly done, but that's done enough. And over the next couple of days and weeks, I'll be talking more about the what I would like to do in mid-March, and I will, if you are interested, if you are committed, I want us to start talking about that process so that we can together birth something into the world that really needs to be birthed. Okay, thank you. Blessings to all, and I will talk to you more at another point in time.